Of the 3 games in this year's Halloween special, GTFO is definitely the scariest. The game's described as an action horror cooperative FPS, where players team up in groups up to 4 to explore and extract valuable artifacts from a vast underground complex that's been overrun by terrifying creatures. This is a very accurate description. The basic concept is that you and your team are prisoners, and you're being forced to enter a deep underground complex to carry out an objective. When you go to launch a game, you'll see a diagram of the complex, which is called the rundown. Every now and then, the developers wipe a rundown and replace it with a new one. For now, rundowns are basically content drops for the game to keep it feeling fresh. The complex is broken up into levels, and each level has 2 sections for you to play. They get more challenging the deeper you go in, and along the way you'll have to manage resources, unlock doors, use computer terminals, and of course avoid or kill monsters. I think where this game is strongest is definitely in the atmosphere. Textures look great, but lighting and fog effects in particular look absolutely stunning. Light blooms and reflects off surfaces with believable effects, and the pretty common mist or fog or whatever it is diffuses light sources beautifully. But as good as everything looks, a lot of it is in service of building tension and putting you on edge, which it definitely succeeds at. Even before you get into a match, the game does everything it can to make you feel uncomfortable, like throwing disturbing sound effects and screaming noises at you when you're loading menus. And every game starts off with a scripted sequence of you and your team dangling above the entrance to the facility before being thrust down at high speed in basically pitch darkness. You can tell in this clip here that this character is incredibly stressed out. But don't let the atmosphere of the whole thing distract you, because monsters are often hiding in the fog, and you might not notice until they're right on top of you. The creatures in this game are pretty interesting. They're all freaky to look at, and there's different types that have different traits, which forces the player to approach and overcome them in different ways. Like 90% of these things start in a sort of docile, semi-unconscious state. These guys are either standing or hunched over on the ground in different places around the levels, and the game highly encourages players to use a stealth approach to dispatch these things instead of using brute force, because the game takes a hardcore approach to gunplay and damage values. Periodically, you'll see these guys glow red and start convulsing and jostling around. This means you need to stop what you're doing or else they'll wake up. And this is what a lot of the gameplay comes down to, you just sneaking up to these guys and winding up your melee weapon and smashing them in the face.
Sleepers, don't make a sound.
You've got your fodder type enemies called strikers, which are basically speedy zombies. They're pretty easy to take out, but they'll mess you up if you're not careful. Then you got your big strikers, which are exactly what they sound like, a plus-sized version of the normal strikers, but they're much bigger and they can tank more melee hits and gunshots. There's also these things called shooters, which obviously shoot things at you, and they come in big and small versions as well. Then there's the scout, which is one of the patrolling enemies. It walks around an area and pauses every once in a while to slowly stretch out these gross tendril-looking things in all directions, using them to feel out for the players. A lot of the time you can just take out the enemies quietly and move on, or you can just stealth past them altogether. But sometimes you'll have no choice but to fight these ugly bastards. You'll either come across a door that will trigger an alarm, which throws dozens of chompy boys at you while you go through the process of unlocking it, or one of your team will just slip up on his way crouch walking through a crowded room. It's going to happen, and in these scenarios you're going to have to use your guns, and unfortunately this is probably my biggest gripe with the game. The shooting feels kind of flat. There's a handful of different weapons for you to choose from, but none of them feel really good to shoot. They lack any kind of meaty impact or sound when you fire them, and there's something weirdly floaty about the way they behave when you ADS. But anyway, that's not the point of the game. It's not about going in guns blazing and straight up killing everything. It's about making you feel tense and vulnerable on your way to the objective, and in that regard it absolutely succeeds. You never really feel completely safe when you're wandering around a level. Even when you clear a room of enemies, you're still kind of on your toes, kind of looking out the corner of your eye for the next threat. And for that, I just have to applaud the game because they just nail that atmosphere and that feeling of getting under your skin. GTFO is still in early access on Steam, but the devs do have a basic roadmap on their website, which you should definitely check out. Link to that will be in the description. Well, that's GTFO. It's a really unique game. It kind of reminds me of Left 4 Dead, but a more hardcore, slower paced version of it, I think. It's really unique, and I think it pulls off the horror vibe pretty effectively. It's always making you feel on edge, on your toes, and that's what the whole thing is about, really. I only wish the gunplay was a little more refined. If you want to check it out, links will be in the description. Thanks for watching this final video in my Halloween special series. I hope you guys liked the videos. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Consider leaving a like if you liked the video. Have fun, be safe out there. I'm Oscar Mikey, and until next time, game on, my friends.